Squirrel Boy is the classic story of a boy and his squirrel? Wait, is this right? Yes, well, that's what it says. Okay, I'll continue. Squirrel Boy is the classic tale of the misadventures of a squirrel and his boy, Rodney J. Squirrel, and his boy Andy, to be more exact. What a wonderful premise for a cartoon. After all, caring for a pet is a good lesson for any girl or boy, or at least it should be. Rodney and Andy are pals, and Andy's life sure would be boring without Rodney around to find fun. The best of friends, they look out for one another and always have each other's back. Rodney and Andy love one another, but perhaps there's something a little squirrely here.
You think it's so easy taking care of a pet. Easy, deeply rewarding, and fun.
Rodney is a self-deluded, know-it-all rodent with big ideas and an even bigger mouth. Together with his best friend Andy, they drive the neighborhood nuts. Yep, Rodney is unusual for a squirrel. Let's get to know him a little better. Rodney thinks he's one of the family, the most important member of the family as a matter of fact, and he's surprised when he's treated as anything other than rodent royalty. This coddled squirrel knows one thing for sure. He prefers life as a pampered pet in the great indoors to the uncomfortable life outside.
Andy, I'm sick of this place. Let's go home and watch The Woods on DVD.
He gets along fine with other undomesticated animals and is in touch with his own wild side, but he prefers the life of luxury being with Andy affords him. That is, if you could call life in a cardboard box luxurious. Yep, Rodney is one peculiar squirrel. But what about Andy, Rodney's boy? What kind of kid prefers a squirrel as a pet? Well, Andy's really just a regular boy. He's not great at sports, but he tries hard. He loves his mom and dad, and he tries to be a good Badger Scout.
My wallet is almost done. It's got a cup holder, a cup dispenser, and a handy form for ordering more cups.
Of course, the kid's got a squirrel as a best friend, so he is a little unusual. He suffers from food allergies. He's slightly myopic. He has a minor case of obsessive-compulsive disorder and is working on an enviable comb collection. Even though Andy's a smart kid, his bushy-tailed buddy doesn't have much trouble convincing him to go along with his half-baked ideas. A little naive but helpful and kind, Andy's the ideal unwitting accomplice for Rodney's schemes. Andy's the perfect sidekick for Rodney and vice versa. Andy and Rodney's neighbors can be a little harder to get along with than the vermin.
The Witness Protector Program moved my dad down the block. I'm your new neighbor.
There's their arch rivals, Kyle Finkster and his club soda-loving pet parrot,
Salty Mike.
These two are bad news. Fellow Badger Scouts, Kyle and his winged ally cause constant grief to our heroes. Kyle is a thief and a vandal, and his toenails annually overgrow, which forces Salty Mike to shear them back.
Salty Mike! My toenails!
When they're not fighting beak and tail, Salty Mike and Rodney both faithfully try to take care of their helpless human companions. With enemies like Salty Mike and Kyle, Andy better have more reliable friends than just Rodney to back him up. Luckily, Andy has two parents who support and love him. Mr. Johnson, Andy's father, and known as Mr. J to some folks around here, doesn't care much for Rodney on occasion, and he isn't afraid to show it.
I invented shirtless sleeves. We're gonna be rich.
Rodney, do you know what happened to all my sleeves?
It's not that Mr. J doesn't like Rodney, it's just that little rodent causes big trouble. With all the strife he creates in the Johnson household, it's a wonder Mr. J hasn't found a way to get rid of him permanently. Perhaps the problem is deeper than just a little mischief-making. Maybe Mr. J is a little jealous of the influence Rodney has over his son. But he's a good father and wants his son to be happy, even if happiness for Andy is a four-footed, frustrating friend. Mr. J is a man of many interests. He has a collection of clowns in different moods. He has a fairly unhealthy preoccupation with paste.
Don't worry, glue can fix that.
And eating contests. He's also shown a fair amount of unhappiness about losing his hair.
I'm Mr. Johnson. I'm living a lie. But I look fabulous. Wait! I've got shoes that can make it work.
He loves his son, but when Andy and Rodney get together, their hijinks make Mr. J want to kick the oblivious Rodney out on his furry tail. Then again, Mr. J probably cares for Rodney more than he'd like to admit. Yep, Mr. J and Rodney do team up at times. When Mr. J lost his voice from laughing too hard, Rodney volunteered to give his Badger Scout speech for him. And then there was their stint as a famous karaoke duo.
I'd like you to like me.
What about Mrs. J? She gets along well with Rodney as long as things don't get too out of hand.
Andy, clean up after your pet. Yes, Andrew. How can you allow your pet to make such a mess?
Frankly, I'm shocked.
And she requires that any sticky buns that go missing are replaced.
You're gonna be in a lot of trouble for eating all our sticky buns.
Not only is Mrs. J Andy's mom, but she's also an accomplished eating coach.
Swallow faster! Mash harder!
Despite being such an even-keeled, upbeat member of the family, even Mrs. J has her limits with Rodney.
How can I put this delicately? Rodney, you're acting like a butt.
Please refer to me from this point forward as Mr. Heiny McBooty Cheeks.
The elder Johnsons don't mind all rodents. For instance, Leon the yard squirrel prefers the call of the wild to the life of a kept pet, and he coexists just fine on the Johnsons' homestead. Leon is one of Rodney's feral friends, and he tried to show Rodney how to get along in the wilds. Although Leon is a confirmed outdoor squirrel, he somehow still has a working television with cable access in his tree.
Man, that's good for him. I wonder who he studied under.
Darlene is the female of the species Rodney likes most. She's a fan of anything paranormal and more likely to follow her horoscope or the advice of a random gypsy than to trust her own natural instincts. But it's something more natural than supernatural that draws Rodney to her.
Hi, Rodney. You like my suit?
Words cannot describe what I think of your suit, so I'll make a noise.
Although she's very affectionate, Darlene plays hard to get and may like Rodney more as a friend, but amorous Rodney is a persistent rodent, so you never know where this relationship is going.
Rodney, is this a fake fantasy thing?
Sure is.
Oscar is one of Andy's closest human friends in the neighborhood. He wishes he had a best friend like Andy or Rodney, any best friend. The thing about Oscar is his parents are a little overprotective.
Nice avoidance, son.
Although he's forbidden from having a pet, Oscar badly wants his own little furry friend. And although he'd hate to admit it, Rodney is the pet he'd most like to have.
Rodney's about the best gosh darn pet that a gosh darn boy ever had.
Martha is a girl with lots of manic energy, who is always working on a new project, such as her lovely topiary sculpture garden. Because she's bright and driven, she can be a bit obsessive and needy, or as Rodney puts it, disturbed. Rodney's flying squirrel cousin from the big city, Eddie, is a suave, silver-tongued thorn in Rodney's side. Because he can fly, Eddie considers himself a cut above his grounded cousin. Worst of all for Rodney is that the girls may think he's all that, too. Leon's 100-year-old grandfather, Grandpa Squirrel, is a cheerful fella who's a bit touched in the head. He loves a good yarn. When the boys seek his counsel, Grandpa's elaborate fibs can spin off in any direction. That's because Grandpa loves his stories and a good sofa. Oscar's little sister Lulu has a thing for, well, she likes to hug squirrels very tightly. Very, very tightly. I guess having a pet squirrel is no stranger than other pets you might have, like say a squeaky clean octopus, a violence-prone larcenous bunny, or an irate South American parrot. At least in this neighborhood it's not. Squirrel Boy, one crazy squirrel and his faithful boy. The title says it all, because everyone needs a pest friend.